Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. I recently came across a very interesting Sasquatch report from the Yukon that happened back in August of 1978. Happened not too far away from Whitehorse. There was a young man, he was a teenager. He went off on a fishing trip by himself, and while he was on this fishing trip, he encountered something that was very, very bizarre, but not only bizarre, also terrifying. And with these Sasquatch reports, for me, when they are very strange in nature, it always leads me to believe there's a really good chance that they're legit, that they actually happened, and that they aren't hoaxes or anything like that. The subject of Sasquatch is strange enough, so if somebody's going to go out and come up with an encounter story to try and fool people, I feel like they're going to try and make it as realistic as possible. They're not going to make an outlandish, far-fetched story that sounds totally bizarre. But this story is bizarre, and what this kid saw was very, very weird. In addition to this account, I wanted to talk about internet security. I've recently been looking into protecting my internet connection from things like hackers, viruses, and a bunch of other threats. And in my search for protection, I came across NordVPN. NordVPN is the premier virtual private network that protects your internet connection and online privacy. It keeps your online identity safe by hiding your IP address and allows you to use public Wi-Fi safely without any risk of compromising your personal data. With over 5,300 servers in 59 countries around the world, NordVPN has your back virtually wherever you are. Hackers love to exploit unsecured connections to get inside your phones and your computers. Thankfully, with NordVPN, all of your data is protected with next-generation encryption, and there's no sacrifice at all in internet speed or usability. My favorite thing about NordVPN is just how easy it is to use. With just a few simple clicks, you can be protected from online threats that could have potentially devastating effects. NordVPN has you covered and is backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. They have an amazing Christmas promotion right now to get you 4 months for free. Just go to nordvpn.com/mountainbeast to take full advantage of the promotion and protect your internet privacy now. That's nordvpn/mountainbeast. There's a link down below in the description. So this story is very interesting. It happened, like I said, back in 1978 in the Yukon, just outside of Whitehorse along the Yukon River. There was a kid, he was a teenager, he was 15 years old. He was out by himself on his way to go fishing. He wasn't too far away from civilization. 6 kilometers is not that far. But he was on foot, he was walking to a certain spot on the river, and he ended up witnessing a really bizarre sight. He ended up seeing a Sasquatch creature that was very skinny, covered in black hair. There was no actual height that was reported. He couldn't get an actual real good number on the height just because it was so far away and he was very scared. But this kid saw this Sasquatch and it was doing something very weird. What it was doing was dancing around a tree, an aspen tree, in a very bizarre, kind of almost playful way, which leads me to believe that whatever it was a juvenile Sasquatch. I mean, a juvenile Sasquatch could mean a lot of things. It definitely wasn't like a child. As far as age goes, it's probably like a young, like an adolescent Sasquatch. But there are lots of reports out there of Sasquatch that aren't actually really big and thick, hulked up looking creatures. There's a lot of them that have been reported that are more skinny and don't have that mass to them. These reports are very interesting. They're very unusual, but this kid ended up seeing this thing. It was about 200 feet away. And the creature didn't see him. But at this spot on the river, there was actually a shed, like a utility shed or like a shack. And this kid was so scared, he was hiding behind this shack and he was peeking around to see if this creature saw him, which it didn't. But when he had another look at it, this thing, which was dancing around this tree, ended up jumping up and grabbing a branch on the tree, and the branch snapped and the creature fell onto the ground. And that's in the report, the kid says, this was back in the 70s, he's an adult now. He said that this creature jumped, grabbed this branch, the branch broke, and he could hear the branch snap, but that's when the guy said he knew it wasn't a dream because at first he saw it and he was in total shock and he was just overcome with fear because it was so unusual. But he knew it wasn't a dream once he heard the sound. He's like, this is definitely real. This is actually happening, you know, like if any of us came across something like that, we'd probably be thinking the same thing. Like, am I dreaming? I am not supposed to be seeing this. This is so unusual. But he actually saw it, and it scared him so much that his every like fiber in his body was telling him to get out of there. It wasn't the same as the zapping phenomenon that we hear about all the time, where people feel ill or they feel sick. It was more of just like from shock and fear that he felt like he had to get out of there. It was just terror, because it's such a weird thing to witness. You don't expect to see something like that. Plus, this kid is alone. And so he pretty much had the shed, this little building in between him and this creature. And so he had it lined up so the creature wouldn't be able to see him, right? The building was in between them. He hightailed it out of there with his fishing rod and his tackle box and got the heck out of there before this thing could see him. And to this day, he swears that this actually happened. And it scares him thinking about it just as much as it did back then when he actually went through the experience, which is pretty interesting. So it seems like a playful behavior, something you would imagine a younger Sasquatch creature doing, dancing around out in the open, not really paying attention to its surroundings. I feel like the older the Sasquatch is, you know, the more experience they have out in the wilderness, they're not going to be doing things like that. But you wonder how far away mom and dad might have been, you know? I have no idea, like, at what age these creatures would stray from the parents or from home, wherever that may be. But it is interesting because you would think that any place that has like buildings, you'd think it would be considered like a dangerous area, and you wouldn't really want to go there just in case you ran into a person. But John Bindernagel used to say, like, sometimes Sasquatch, they mistakenly blunder out into the open, and a lot of times they're spotted, they're seen, they make a mistake. And it seems to be the case with this story. This young Sasquatch made a mistake. It was distracted doing whatever it was doing, just being playful and having fun, it seems. And you know, this kid came across it, happened to be in the right place at the right time, and you know, he had what sounds like a legit Sasquatch experience. It was investigated by the BFRO, who claimed that the guy seemed super genuine and very legit, and that he actually had the experience. When I was out in the Nordic area filming Wild Man, like, we had a lot of weird things happen that led me to believe that whatever was going on, if there was indeed a Sasquatch creature there, that it was juvenile, because it just seemed like the things that were going on, the events that were happening when we were filming that, they seemed like playful things, you know, handprints showing up on the car door, on the window. The footprints we found were small, and they appeared to look like what juvenile Sasquatch tracks are supposed to look like. So it must be a curiosity thing. The young ones might be really curious, and they might be more willing to take risks, which seems pretty dangerous, but it appears to be the case in a lot of these encounters and in a lot of these reports. So this kid had went home, he had told friends and family about it. They brushed it off as being nonsense. They didn't believe him, really. But he did go back to the area with a friend to try and find the branch that broke off the tree and to see if there was anything unusual in the area, like footprints and whatnot. But he didn't find anything. But imagine experiencing something like that. Because this guy, he was already familiar with Sasquatch because he had read one of Renee Hinden's books. He had read a book about it, he was interested in it, and then he ended up having an experience. But imagine going through that and being so intrigued by it and knowing it happened and 100% believing it yourself, and then spending your whole life, you know, being interested in the subject, never to have an experience like that again. You know, I feel like that'd be a very difficult thing to live with. having that experience and then maybe trying to have it again, going out into the bush in hopes of seeing one of these things and never seeing it again, I feel like that would really mess with your head, because then you would be questioning yourself, like, did I actually see that? You know, like, and you know you saw it, you heard the sound, but it would play with your mind like that. Even like the UFO stuff that was going on here, that was playing with my mind. I knew I saw it, but at the same time, it was so unbelievable. And at the like when it first started, it was very terrifying. I felt like I had seen something that I wasn't supposed to see. And the very first time I saw one of these things in the sky, I just ran in here. I slammed the door and locked it, and I closed the blinds because I was scared. I feel like that feeling is maybe just a fraction of what this kid felt encountering the Sasquatch, but it's enough to make me, I guess, imagine in a way what he might have went through. I feel like seeing something like a Sasquatch is extremely unusual because it goes against, you know, the history of human evolution, or of what evolution is supposed to be, you know, the written history of hominids. You know, it's something that you're not supposed to see. So when you see it, at first you're gonna think, am I really seeing this? Am I dreaming? You know? And then you know, he's peeking around the building, he's looking at it, and he's like, yeah, I'm seeing this. And then he hears the noise, confirming, yeah, this is actually happening. Wow, this is a Sasquatch. And so coming forward and telling that story, not only did you see a Sasquatch, but when you explain it in detail, telling other people like what it was actually doing, dancing around a tree, like who's gonna believe that? That is so unusual, but that makes me believe it more because it's so crazy. Sometimes the stories are so crazy, I feel like they have to be true. I feel like if someone's gonna make up a report or an encounter story, they're gonna try and make it as believable as possible. But the fact that this kid claimed that it was dancing around a tree in like a weird, playful, maybe even like a ritualistic kind of way, I feel like that makes it even more believable. And it just shows like a different aspect of Sasquatch, that they have that side to them. Like, I don't know how playful they are as adults, but it seems like the younger ones, like the teenager ones or the, you know, the juvenile ones, it seems like they're a bit more playful and they're very curious and they're more willing to take risks. And they're not as aware, you know. I feel like maybe the sound of the river was probably masking the sound of the teenager approaching, and he was 200 feet roughly away. So it was kind of the perfect scenario. This thing was distracted by whatever it was doing. And it's just the right place at the right time. I feel like that's how all these experiences happen, all these encounters usually happen, because, you know, we always go out into the bush looking for these things, and rarely, very rarely do we ever find anything. It's very rarely when things happen, you know, when you might record a sound or find a footprint, or, you know. Most researchers who go out looking for them don't actually ever see them. It's just, the stars kind of have to align for one of these encounters to happen, and you have to kind of, you know, stumble upon one when it's not paying attention, which I feel is really hard to do, but it does happen. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. It's just a very interesting encounter that I thought was very fascinating. Thanks for watching this video. We'll see you next time on Mountain Beast Mysteries.